Hola, bon dia, senyores i senyors.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, everybody. Before I start, I'd like to, part of my presentation will be in Catalan, part in Spanish, and part in English. So if anybody needs simultaneous interpretation, please raise your hand and somebody will bring it to you. My goodness, we all speak Spanish, Catalan, and English. Perfect. Okay. So listen, to start, thank you very much for your participation, both in person and online. This is the second year we do an online AGM, and I welcome you to this AGM on my own behalf and on behalf of the board. And I'd like to say that most of the board members are present here today in the room. We excuse Stephen Langman and Jose Manuel Vargas, who will not be here with us today in person. As we always do, during this session, we will explain to you the accounts and the management for 2022. And we will also share with you the current situation for the company. Well, the landmarks achieved in 2022 have been made possible thanks to the daily work of our team, which is part of the Fluidra group, which last year showed great flexibility and adaptation capability, navigating in an environment with great uncertainty and great inflation. But given all of these challenges that came one after the other, our team was very resilient, knew how to adapt itself to the circumstances, and it was always focused for the company's good. We are well aware that we are navigating in uncharted waters in our industry after these past events. Well, it is even a bit more uncertain than in other industries, but we're ready to keep on working with the same passion, the same effort, and the same commitment we have always had. In the last few years, we have built up a great company. We are leaders in our industry, and beyond the current uncertainties, which are partly normal after these years of very strong growth, we're fully convinced, and we are working on it every day, for Fluidra to be very well positioned to keep on growing and creating value in the future. I'd like to take advantage of the fact that we're starting this AGM to thank you for your dedication, to thank and to thank publicly the management board, especially Gabriel. Gabriel, for personal reasons, will not be in the AGM with us in the future. This is his last AGM, and in fact, we're talking about how the company has evolved in the past 8 years. And given that he comes from the audit world, well, he to sum it up and to give an image of our evolution, he said, "Eloy, when I came in, the results that we had in 1 year were lower than the results you will give tomorrow to the market just for one single quarter." And this gives us a good idea of the evolution of this company. Gabriel, this journey without you would have been very difficult indeed. So thank you very much, Gabriel. And I'd like to welcome, we have here in front of us, Manuel Puig and Emma Gines, who are part of our adventure. And if you approve their entry into the board. Okay, and to end, before starting, I'd like to thank the support we get from you, from all of you, and the trust you have always expressed, both for the company and for ourselves as managers. Thank you very much indeed. And I'm going to give the floor to the Secretary of the Board, Mr. Collado. Good morning, everybody. First of all, I'd like to inform the shareholders that the board has asked for the presence of a notary public for the minutes. And this will be Luis Bosch, the notary public from Catalonia, who is present in this AGM. Mr. Notary, please introduce yourself so that the shareholders can actually identify you. Good morning. My name is Luis Bosch Naranjas, and I am part of the illustrious Notary Public Association of Catalonia. And everything is according to Article 210 and Article 7 of the rules of the AGM. The AGM will be structured in the following way. To start, we will proceed to fulfill the formal requirements for the valid constitution of the AGM, and then the CEO and the executive chairman will make a presentation about information about 2022 for the group and other issues related to the AGM. Thirdly, the secretary will take the floor to talk about the changes and the amendments to the rules of the board approved since the last AGM according to Article 2038 of the company law. And after that, we will open up a Q&A session. According to what is said in Article 20 of the rules, the shareholders who want to ask a question during the AGM and ask for information or clarifications with regards to the issues included in the agenda to give us proposals can do so by asking the questions that will start now until the end of the executive. Here, the shareholders who are attending in person will have to write down the content of their question in the card that will be given to them together with this document. And they should point out their names and surnames, the number of shares they hold, and the ones they represent, and to give it to the people who will be taking it from them from now on. And those shareholders who are online will be able to do so by going to the Q&A lid in the application. When they ask a question, they should say what the question is about on the text field for that. If the shareholder wanted his or her question to be part of the minutes in case they attend in person, they should ask so specifically, and their full question to the people in the room so that the notary can actually include it. And in case the shareholders who attend online, they should actually say which text they want to be part of minutes. In case the shareholder does not actually give it fully, the notary public will try to write freely the content of it, trying to respect its essence. And the Q&A session will be a single one, and the shareholder who attends in person and who wants to ask a question will have to tell the people in the room before the end of the presentations. Once we have the full list of the shareholders who want to intervene, we will open up a Q&A session asking the shareholders to speak up in order. The shareholders who attend in person and who have asked to intervene and their question to be part of minutes, they will need to read it literally. On the other hand, with regards to shareholders who attend online, we will read the questions they ask and saying what's the identity of the shareholder. We want to remind the shareholders that the information asked by any one of them is not available right now. It will be eased in writing within the 7 days after the AGM. Once the turn of the shareholders' interventions is over, we will actually subject to voting by the AGM the proposals, and the voting channels, the remote voting channels with regards to the items of the agenda will be closed at the end of this AGM. So now let's fulfill the formal requirements for the valid constitution of the AGM. The management board, agreed in its meeting on the 30th of March 2023 to summon the shareholders to the AGM to be held on the 10th of May 2023 at 12:30 in a single call at the Hotel AC St. Cugat, and to also allow for remote systems given what's foreseen in Articles 28 base of the bylaws and of the AGM rulings. And The summoning was actually published in the Expansion newspaper on the 1st of April 2023 and on the company's webpage and the CNMV on the 31st of March 2023, with all of the items to be voted in this AGM. In the program, the program and the agreement proposals and the reports have been available since the publication of the initial summoning. Bearing in mind that the legal summoning of the AGM has been published, we assume it has already been read by everybody. According to the bylaws, we formally constitute the Fluidra AGM, composed by its chairman, secretary, and other management board members who attend in person, to the exception, except for Mr. Steve Langman and Mr. Jose Manuel Vargas, who have apologized because they have not been able to attend. As chairman and secretary of the AGM, we have Mr. Eloy Planas-Corts and I myself, Albert Collado Armenol. The AGM will be validly constituted in a single summon when the shareholders who are present or represented possess at least 25% of the capital with voting rights. The equity of Fluidra is 192 billion euro, and it is divided into the same number of shares with €1 of a nominal value each. They have all been fully subscribed and paid for this AGM. The shareholders who have issued their vote, the remote vote, they are taken as shareholders who are present. Next, I'm going to tell you what the attendance list. Given the computer science support and the data that I have, the provisional quorum of attendance is as follows. The moment we close the list, we have in the AGM, between those who are in person and represented, 218 shareholders who hold 166,035,253 shares, who represent 86.42% of the company's equity. And here we have present in the AGM 60 shareholders who hold 17,471,312 shares, equivalent to 9.09% of the company's capital. Out of these shares, 2,312,549 are shares, equivalent to 1.2% of the company's capital, whose voting rights are spent according to what's foreseen in Article 148 of the company law. And there are in the AGM 158 shareholders represented who hold 148,563,941 shares, equivalent to 77.32% of the company's capital. Given that we comply with the requirements established by the company law, the bylaws and the rules of the AGM are complied with for the quorum for the valid constitution of the AGM in its first call. The final quorum will be set at the end of the AGM and will be published. So we have enough quorum to consider this quorum to be fully set up and to discuss all of the issues in the agenda. Okay, having thus complied with all of the requirements, I declare validly constituted this AGM. The Notary Public now has the floor. According to what has been foreseen in Article 101.3 of the rules, I have to ask the following question. Would any shareholder make a reservation or a protest against the issues related to the provisional number of shareholders who are at the AGM and the company's capital who is present and represented? If thus were the case, please tell me right now. And at the same time, those attending online can do so through the remote application or the distance application. The final quorum will be reflected in the minutes. Let's wait for 1 second to give enough time for the shareholders, especially those who are connected online, just in case one of them wants to express his or her own reservations or protests. It looks like no shareholder wants to express reservations or protests. Once I have verified that we comply with the legal requirements for the constitution of this AGM. Thank you, Mr. Notary. And next, I'm going to give the floor to Fluidra's CEO, Mr. Bruce Brooks.
Gracias, Albert. Lo siento por mi español. Probablemente más fácil para todos que yo hablo en inglés, ¿sí? Thanks, everyone, for attending. I just want to warn you that for time purposes, I'm going to go with a script today. Usually when I have a presentation opportunity like this, I go unscripted. But Clara Valera, our head of IR, said, "Bruce, we're on a tight time constraint today, so let's keep you reined in." And so hence, here we go. Okay, so if we go to slide 6. These times are definitely volatile, and visibility is currently challenging, and I think confusing for many on Fluidra's results. There are many questions about the pandemic and current economic impact. Although there are no precise answers, I believe this chart puts in context 2022's performance. Fluidra is a structurally stronger business today. Over the last 3 years, we've grown revenues at a compounded average growth rate of 20% and expanded EBITDA margins as well as returns. The global installed base has expanded with more than 1 million additional pools with higher value, underpinning aftermarket demand for the future. We are today a more reliable partner, having grown our share in a large industry. We continue to work to increase this leading market share, offering more connected and sustainable products and creating value for our stakeholders. The numbers you see on slide 7 are the 2021 and 2022 financial highlights for the full year. Sales grew by 9% compared to a very strong prior year to 2,389 million euros, driven by price, acquisitions, and currency. These more than offset a volume slowdown due to the correction of inventory in the channel, which took place mostly in the US and softer demand, particularly in Northern Europe. Adjusted for currency and perimeter, sales declined by 1%. EBITDA was 7% lower compared to a very strong prior year period, reflecting cost inflation, pressures, and an unfavorable product and geographic mix. With the action we have taken on price, we are seeing a sequential underlying improvement in gross margins in the first quarter of 2023, and we are continued to address our fixed cost base. Trading conditions in the second half of 2022 also influenced our inventory and payable levels. Our inventory doesn't age, and we expect that this will correct in 2023. Consequently, the ratio of net debt to last 12-month EBITDA at the end of the year was around 2.6 times. I'm excited by the opportunity we have to become a more efficient and effective business. To that effect, we spent a good part of 2022 assessing and building our simplification program. I will talk about this a bit more later on. On the M&A front, the integration of the businesses we acquired in 2021 went according to plan, complementing and enhancing our product portfolio, particularly in the US. Additionally, we completed 2 acquisitions and agreed a third one to strengthen our European distribution network. We continue to work on developing a pipeline of opportunities. As a testament to our customer-centric approach, I'm proud we were named Vendor of the Year by the 3 largest distributors in North America for the 2nd year in a row. My thanks go to our teams for this unprecedented achievement These awards are a reflection of the extraordinary effort everyone at Fluidra makes to take care of our customers all the way through our value chain. Moving to slide number 8, let me shed some light on our simplification program. This program is mainly built on 2 core areas, one focused on improving gross margin and the other one focused on reducing the fixed cost base. It's also underpinned by our drive to foster an agile and dynamic organization, our culture and Fluidra values. With this plan, we expect to deliver 100 million euros of EBITDA over the next 3 years, with 1/3 accumulating in each year and total one-off costs below 1 time. As you see on the right-hand side of the slide, we have to date around 300 initiatives that are already being implemented, which we expect will contribute to our 2023 performance with savings of 24 million euros. We've made outstanding progress so far, and we're confident on delivering 1/3 of the program's total savings in 2023. Turning to page 9, let me highlight a few achievements on the sustainability side, which we believe is core to delivering on our mission, vision, and values. On the environmental front, we're happy to share that we managed to reduce our carbon footprint by 25% in our operations, with a 7% decrease in Scope 1. Furthermore, we reached our 2022 target to source more than 80% of our electricity needs from renewable sources. We're fortunate and proud to enjoy a high level of employee engagement. According to our 2022 survey, we have an outstanding 90% engagement score. We continue to work to reduce the gender wage gap, and we made good progress in 2022, reducing it to 5%. We believe in equal pay for equal work, and we're well positioned to attain our goal by 2024. Our efforts are recognized by ESG rating agencies. CDP has upgraded us to a score of B. Having further improved our S&P rating, we've been included for the first time in their yearbook of most global sustainable companies, leading the pool sector. All in all, we keep making progress against our ESG commitments. Turning to page 11, you can see the first quarter 2023 results that we reported this morning. Let me summarize some key points. First quarter performance was in line with our expectations. Gross margin is recovering with good price read-through, and costs are stabilizing. Volumes in the first quarter were affected by channel destocking together with softer demand, driven by macroeconomic environment and weather effects, particularly in the U.S. In this context, we're taking the right steps to strengthen our business for the long term with our simplification program. Earlier this year, we shared with the market our wide 2023 guidance. The pool season is commencing, and while the macro environment remains uncertain, our outlook remains within those expectations. We're therefore maintaining our 2023 guidance, which you can see on the slide. With that, I will turn it back over to Albert. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bruce. Le doy la palabra a don Eloy Planes.
Sí, me gustaría ahora entrar a hablar básicamente del tema de remuneración a accionistas y del tema de gobierno corporativo. La compañía ha sido...
And corporate government. The company has been growing in the investor world. We have a team which has this year carried out around 380 interviews with possible investors across several meetings. And this is something we do in all our territories. Fluidra's stock, to be honest, was not immune to the general market volatility and to the volatility of our specific sector last year. and there are worse macroeconomic expectations for the future, which did really affect the stock price last year. Had rather similar years, though slightly better than other companies that had been winning throughout the COVID times. But with this perspective that Bruce was talking about, saying that today we are a structurally more sound company compared to 3 years ago, if we put the stock price in perspective over the past 3 years, you will realize that stock prices have recovered beyond any comparable index. In rather troubled moments where stock prices might suffer a bit more stress, we believe our remuneration policy for stockholders is even more important. We are definitely sure that this policy must, in a way, reward our shareholders year by year, which is why we have this 50% net profits for each year. As for 2022, if we could move on to the next slide, the company distributed 166 million euro in dividends, which was twice as much as 2021, and bought back 3.5 million shares, which is yet another way to reward stockholders, and which is also part of our remunerations policy. Along the line of that same policy, this year, if you approve, the board has proposed to the general stockholders meeting a dividend of 166 euro per share, which, as I was saying, it goes along that 50% payout from the net profits for 2022. Talking about corporate government, from the board, we are convinced of the necessity to have a sound board to secure the company's sustainability in the long term. In 2022, we continued working honestly and transparently, always keeping lines open and transparent and sincere with our shareholders, with our staff, as well as society as a whole. And in that sense, we have some external indexes to offer some context about this. We like the Reporter report, which rewards transparency and clarity in the information on public companies in Spain. And this year we are up 4 positions. And as Bruce was saying, we also looked at more international ratings, which don't cover governance. We are also ahead in Standard & Poor's, moving from 60 to 66. Another key element within corporate governance is to comply with your recommendation of the Good Governance EMV codes, which as of today, we comply with 88% of those that apply in our case. And we have plans to comply with the remaining 12% over the next few years. One of the points where we are not in compliance, and we've actually been on the principle, is when it comes to diversity within the Council. And to be honest, we have been evolving over the past few years with Ima as our new board member. And we have gone from not having any women on the board to having 3 female members. And we know we are very clear that the board is clear in the fate of the company. And in that sense, we know it must gradually evolve. We have to balance the knowledge of the sector, the knowledge of the company, as well as diversity. And as I was saying, when it comes to diversity, we gradually hope to slowly finally comply. Today, we suggest 2 new additions. One is Amar, who not only brings this gender diversity, but also a great knowledge when it comes to the digital world and transformation world and what that represents for companies. And as you know, this is one of the pillars, digital transformation, when looking towards the future. So we think that it could really help us along this path. We also add to the board Manuel Puig, as a non-proprietary member. Sorry, I'm looking ahead because he's right in front of me, and I never know whether to call him Manel or Manuel. So Manel joins us as a non-proprietary member. He is representing here not only his shares, but only the Goria family shares, among which they add up to a little more than 12.7% of the company. Manel has had a great trajectory at Fluidra. I believe he started out as a shareholder about 10 years ago, always with a long-term vision, and we believe that having him here not only gives us long-term stability, but also has great knowledge as a proprietor in a successful company with a high degree of internationality. So he's a great addition to the board. So we will be proposing both these new additions to our board. We will now be presenting the work done by the different committees. Please excuse us because this is the lightest ones. The other two were a lot denser. I'm not going to read them. I just want to highlight some points. We made a decision to turn the committee at the board into the ESG and strategy committee because we believe the whole compliance and ESG follow-up is based on the previous committees, and we believe sustainability must be part and parcel of our strategy. We work with a key element, which is water. And actually, this area of Catalonia and Southern Europe as a whole are under heavy restrictions because of the drought. We are highly aware of the medium that we work with, not just with water, but also with energy. And we think that this is the great risk that we have as a sector, but also a great opportunity. I also want to give some context because we're seeing so much of this in the news. Pools are not a great consumer of water. They're just very visible. And the perception oftentimes comes with this notion of a great water consumption. And just to give you some perspective, the consumption of all waters in France, which is the only territory where we have information, but it must be very similar to Spain. In the French market, pools are 0.5% of the whole water consumption in the country. That said, we must also work along this line and make sure that pools use less water and less energy. And Fluidra is actually spearheading most of the necessary technologies to accomplish that. We believe that the sector works along this vision, how to make sure that pools are more sustainable and reach zero net impact. The vision from outside is a bit more ambitious. We believe that pools can be a positive addition both in the energy as well as the water consumption to become a more integrated share of the family unit. And along this vision, with this concept, because this all comes from the Delegate Committee, along this concept, from the committee, we want to foster, as I was saying, that ESG, that the sustainability aspect is really tied to the company strategy. Skipping ahead to the other two committees, to my right, here's Brian, the chairman of the Audits Committee, who has worked not just to assure the good state of the financial state throughout the year, but he's also reviewed in detail key areas of the company to reduce risks. And you can see here cybersecurity, IT, fiscal strategy, just to give you some examples. To my side, next to Brian, is also Esther Berrozpe, who's the chairwoman of the Nominations and Retributions Committee. As you can see, this has been a very intense year, a lot of movement, where we've worked on remuneration aspects, short and long term, as well as the search to strengthen both the team and the board. They're both here during the Q&A, you have any questions that you'd like to see in more detail about any of these commissions. That said, I will now give the floor to Albert to move on to the more exciting part of today. Thank you, Eloy. Before we move on to the next point, We remember the shareholders, and once the presentations by the CEO and the chairman are closed, we will be closing the last seconds, the last moments of the general meeting. According to the Article 2008 of the Society and Capitals Law, we inform you of the modifications of the shareholders approved since the last general meeting. In March 20th, 2023, the board approved, with a favorable report from the Nomination and Retributions Committee and Audits Committee, to approve the modification of Article 6 and 7 from our rulings effective today to make the amount of members of the committee, of the Administration Committee, more suitable according to the Council ruling. So going from 12 to 13 and other minor adjustments when it comes to corporate governance. The ruling, the text that results, you can consult on the corporate website. And now we will be seeing the shareholders. We'll give the floor to the shareholders present on the board according to the faculties awarded to the chairman by Article 25. He has delegated to the secretary the moderation of the discussion. We ask all shareholders that desire to say something to please raise their hands. Number one, we will have all the speeches from the shareholders, and later we will be giving the answers, including by those of the shareholders that are attending this meeting remotely. And now we give the word to Mr. Javier Puente. Hello, good afternoon. My question is on, debt, the Fluidra debt. And I would like to have as much information as possible, whether it's in euro, in dollars, in bonds, in banks. In a stressful scenario of sales where we don't know how we're doing, how strong the company is to pay up all this interest, and what can you tell us what your forecast is, whatever it may be, for 1, 2, 3 years in the future? Because since I don't know how the company debt stands, whether there's enough cash flow, whether it's robust. That's my question, because I bought quite a few shares, but I sold them back in fear of the debt. I have still some, but not as many as I would like, and I'm really worried about that matter. Thank you. Okay, if Mr. Secretary will allow us, we'll answer one by one. You'll see after my answer that you'll have to buy back your stock. I do understand your concern, and I believe that the company financial policy is very clear. We like to work with the company around 2 fishes, the EBITDA multiples. That's our policy, and we like to work at this level. And if people can say if that's inefficient, I think they're very proper levels for 2 reasons. Number one, the company does acquisitions and sometimes gives us that parcours, which allows us to be in a position to do things. And then ultimately to go over some hiccups or more complex situations. This is just a general policy, just so you know. So when you're asking, look, where are we going? So we find ourselves in a sector that generates a lot of revenue. Last year was very special because the sector had a lot of stock on the pipeline and had to pull on the brakes, and that means we had to brake as well. In a year where the supply chain was very complex, we had a big backlog, and actually the cash flow for last year is actually in our balance for the working capital. Fortunately, our stocks don't expire. These are stocks that can be sold indefinitely. So this is just an additional cash flow that will be generating over the following trimesters. This has brought us to this uptick in debt, 2.6, and we're now facing a year that has been a bit more difficult, and we expect to see some more uptick. But as I was saying, the cash flow the company will slowly be deleveraging, and across different trimesters, maybe in a year, 18 months, we should be back, or maybe 2 years in this 2 line. talking about the solidity of the balance, just to put your mind at ease, our debt, there's a part in dollars and another one in euros, which try to cover in the most natural way a risk both in dollars and euro, with a very long maturity, actually in 2022, in the impact on the financial aspects of last year, which is the cost of refinancing the debt, which was done in January, in an environment that I believe closed a bit later, with a long debt maturity. We're talking about 2029, which is enough time to make sure certain aspects relax, with barely any covenants, so a lot of peace of mind to go on. Additionally, practically with 70% of the debt cost at a fixed rate, there's a 30% that's more tied to the net working capital that's not fixed, but 70% is at fixed costs. So I would say it's all under control. So our desire and the company, because of the way it's generated, it can deleverage quickly and go back this 2 level. And we have, things coming back from last year and the situation we found ourselves at the beginning of this year. But as you see, as months go by, it becomes lower. And from a balance point of view, no problem at all. We have enough coverage to go on. Was that enough detail for you? And I hope I encourage you. Well, I'm sorry, that's not up to me. Okay, we now give the word to Mr. Giuseppe Marfà. Good morning, everyone. My name is Giuseppe Marfà. Should I stand up? Whichever you prefer. So I am an apothecary and economist, Giuseppe Marfà. I am a shareholder, a lifelong shareholder, not just myself. I got my family and friends tied in, obviously, because you know us, and we're always here, as many of us as we can. I have never sold Fluidra shares, and I'm not going to sell Fluidra shares. Quite on the contrary, my family keeps buying more and more. You can say, why? This dude is never selling. What's the deal here? Yes, I sold a ton of shares from Grifols at 35 and 25, 100,000. And we're at like 8, 9, 10, 10 and a half. I still have some out of moral obligation and affection for the family. So if I'm not selling here, is primarily out of affection to the Planas family and the rest of the shareholders, but also because as an expert in accounts and balance results, I think this is looking great. Point number 1. First trimester 2023. I'm very pleased because a few years ago when I requested it to your father, you communicated to the meeting right before the first trimester, because as shareholders who come here and make the effort to be present were the first to learn the results of the first trimester and hear you talk about them. So just, carry on. My question is as follows. If the following trimesters follow the predictions, which it looks like they will, what is the forecast for dividends 2023 that we would be paid in 24 if the predictions all come true? Point number 2. My grandfather. Yes. Point number 2, my grandfather. The chairman listens to his dad, as he should, but he always remembers his granddad from the Pyrenees, and so do I. My grandfather inherited a textile plant. It wasn't exactly textile, it was textile machinery back when he was an engineering student. And he passed away at the ripe old age of 90 many years. The plant was working, the company was working, and it was profitable. What was the advice that I got from my grandfather when I finished studying economy and pharmacy with extraordinary price? He said, look, I never studied economics. I only studied engineering, and that was many years ago. But I'll give you a piece of advice since you came here today to show me this award that you got at the end of your degree. The most important thing about a company is not that it's large. The most important thing about a company is that it's profitable. And for me, who I'm the owner, for the family and for our partners. And if it's bigger, so much the better, because that might make it more profitable. But the most important thing is not the size, is that it's profitable. And that's what you do, and that's why I like and why I'm not selling and why I keep buying more and more. And perhaps that's what Grifols didn't do, and I wish and hope that they will soon recover, but they wanted to become bigger and bigger and bigger with more and more and more debt. On the other hand, as the other shareholders said, our debt is under control, and this is very important. So carry on as you are. If we become bigger, so much the better. But the most important thing for you and for all shareholders is that it's profitable because of two reasons. Because that way we will have more dividends. And even more importantly, we will have sustained dividends over time. They will not run out this year. But we will have more dividends over the next few years, which didn't happen with Grifols. Point number 3, most important of all. I know I'm repeating myself from other years, but it's the truth. I would like to thank and congratulate the board and the entire company and their workers. You do such a great job, always. You make the company work really well. You think ahead. Not just the present, but the future. And you think about shareholders and their dividends. So congratulations, thank you, and that's all.
Bueno, senyor Marfà.
Thank you, Mr. Marfà. You said it all yourself. Yes. I'm looking for, sorry, I don't know the number off the top of my head because we're struggling to get through the year, so that's what we're focused on rather than exact figures. Well, number one, I really appreciate your words. We are working out of that desire, as you stated. The most important thing here is not about being the largest, it's about being the best at what we do, and we still have a lot of room for improvement. We are fortunate that this is a high-performance sector. We're talking about high margins. Our prediction for this year is around EBITDA margins over 20%. So in a year that will be complicated, but with a large cash flow. It's true that our net profits this year will suffer. Our dividends next year might be a bit smaller, and we need to work to ensure that the balance checks out. But if things go well, and I hope that Xavier, as I've been speaking, has texted me the number, but this is not per share. Yes, I want it per share, please. So we should be hovering around €1, 1.10 net cash flow. So we're talking within 0.5, 0.6 euro per share might be the prediction for next year. As long as we were saying, we are able to keep a balance sheet as robust as we think, and that the year ends up as we expect. But you know us, we tend to be quite cohesive, both in our dividends policy and when it comes to protecting the company. And as I was saying, we really appreciate your words.
Si no es pensi que és l'únic, eh?
Oh, no, you're not the only one. Several tell us and remind us. Thank you. Okay, so no more questions. We'll now move on to voting on the agreement proposal. According to the points on the agenda, the voting will be carried out according to the social statutes and the ruling of the general meeting, subject to the applicable rules and regulations. On that sense, according to Article 24, we will be considering as yay votes to the corresponding actions to the meeting. Number 1, votes corresponding to the shares whose owners or representatives manifest their negative vote or abstention according to the express communication of their vote, so it can be noted in the minutes. In these cases of abstention or blank vote, we please request the shareholders present physically to report the attending personnel, so the notary can be notified with their name and credentials according to the amount of shares that they own or represent, and the vote, the negative vote or blank or abstention. Those who are voting remotely, please do so through the remote voting facilities. Secondly, votes whose owners or representatives left the meeting before the vote and made note of it. The minutes will reflect the result of the votes for each proposal, keeping everything into account. If any shareholders wishes to make note of their vote in relating to any of the agreements, please make a note of it in the card that you'll be handing to the attending staff, or to those shareholders attending remotely, please do so through the appointed voting channels for this meeting. The shareholders will also have at their disposal on the company website the full list of the agreements reflecting the votes and the results thereof. The proposals formulated by the administration on the points on the agenda and the corresponding reports were available on the corporate website since the call for the meeting was published, so we are assuming they have been duly read. All the agreements that are today voted on need to be approved by the legal majorities demanded according to Article 25, as well as the law for social capitals. In this meeting, excepting point number 6, they will be approved by a simple majority, so just by having more votes for than against. As for the statutes, point 6 of the day's agenda must be approved by an absolute majority. As for the data in the hands of the corporate services in the company, I would like to let the shareholders know that the necessary favorable votes have been issued to approve all the points by a sufficient majority. So we now proceed to read the summaries of the agreements formulated by the Council. Point number 1, approval of the annual accounts and reports, both in the company as the groups, which closed at December 31st, 2022. Number 2, approval of the non-financial information consolidated report at Fluidra as incorporated, corresponding to the end of December 31st, 2022. Third, application of the result of the last exercise. The voluntary reserve is 129,978,025 euro.35. Fourth, approval of the management during 2022. Fifth, approval of shareholder retribution through a dividend distribution of 0.7 gross euro per share, which amounts to a maximum total dividend of 134,490,349 euro if the distribution were done on the ordinary amount of shares, which will be paid up in 2 payments. The first one of 0.35 gross euro per share, second 0.35 euro per share, both this year. Number 6, approval of the modification of Article 36 of the social statutes to the effect, among others, of increasing the number of members in the society from 12 to 13 members. Number 7, approval separately of the appointment of Ms. Amar Hines as a independent member of the society and the appointment of Mr. Don Manuel Puig Rocha as a non-proprietary member of the society. 8, re-election of Mr. Jorge Valentín Constant Fernández as an independent member for 2 years. Number 9, we will vote the consultation of the annual report on the remuneration for the councilman corresponding to 2022. Number 10, approval of a global plan of incentive buying for shares for the society for the employees of the group Fluidra staff. And finally, 11, the delegation of the faculties to formalize, interpret, complement, develop, write, and execute the agreements approved by the shareholders meeting. We now give the word to the chairman. Thank you. According to the votes held on the points on the agenda, I communicate that according to what were received, this table has received and once checked the vote represented, the positive and negative votes, and as according to the rules of the meeting, we approve by a sufficient majority all the agreements proposed by the board. The minutes will reflect the result of the vote as well as the vote of the shareholders that thus specified. I would also like to remind you that the agreements approved and the results of the vote will be published on the website within the 5 following days after the finalization of this meeting. And finally, I would like to let you know that the notary minutes will be considered final, and thus no reading or approval will be necessary. And just finally, in closing, we find ourselves in a bit of a turbulent waters in the market, but we are sharply focused and we are working passionately, as I was saying, as of today. Fluidra is a structurally strong company. We are in a good position to continue working on the pool and wellness market, always with the way we act, which is steadfast and honest, transparent, passionate, and committed. Always thinking about generating value for our customers, for the company, and for yourselves, shareholders, as we have been doing throughout our history. This is, you have our commitment, the commitment of our human team, our directors team, and the members of the board to continue working with the same passion and commitment. Please allow me to thank all of you, ladies and gentlemen, shareholders, for your trust and support. I would also like to thank again all the members of the board for the work, for their hard work, as well as acknowledging the work from our whole directive team and our human team, which is really the basis to achieve our goals and get the dividends that Mr. Murphy was demanding for next year. And just to conclude, I would just like to thank you one more time for coming here today. And we will be waiting for you outside so we can keep talking and just do a little toast with champagne. And so this concludes the general shareholders meeting in Fluidra, with no further things to talk about. But before we leave, we will be showing you a video of the award that was done in Italy. And so we will be showing the video, and we'll see you outside.